light way come in this way, which creates even more fuzz around the gobo. Well, you put that donut right there, and you still have the light that goes straight through. You have the light over here, but it stops because the donut is stopping it. You have the light over here, and it stops because, again, the donut is stopping it. So what happens then? Your gobo is very shallow. It's very crisp. You're not going to have that fuzziness or almost like a three-dimensional effect. The same property applies for photography. What this means is that the bigger the aperture, meaning, sorry, I got to take this puppy part again. The bigger your aperture, meaning the hole inside the camera, the more light that can pass through it, especially those lines, and I forgot the name of it. I'll remember the names of those type of waves in just a second. But the more those waves can go through, the bigger your depth of field is. So again, to recap, the bigger the iris inside your aperture, the more light that passes through. Now, where it gets confusing, and it took me a while to grasp it, is your number gets smaller the bigger it is. So for example, if your lens has an aperture of 3.5, okay, so it's this f3.5, the aperture, the iris, will be about this big. Now, if you take it to, let's say, 22, it gets really, really, really small. So the bigger number, the smaller the aperture. So it's kind of backwards. Now, how does this affect the photo overall? It's going to affect the photo because it increases the depth of field. What this means is that the bigger that the actual aperture is, the more those stray, non-parallel ray of lights go through there. So what that means is that it's not going to be as sharp and in focus for the background objects or the objects that are not your primary focus. So I'm going to show you real quick on Lightroom over here so you can tell the difference between the two. We'll go over the ISO and the shutter settings in just a second because you're going to notice they change. But right here you see a photo of Mario. He is drunk and he's not going to hit Bowser at all. Mario, iris, the aperture was way up there. It was as big as it could get on this lens, which is at 1.8. There's light from all the sources coming in, not just straight light, but there's also your unparalleled and perpendicular rays of light coming in. So it's giving you really low depth of field. And the more grain that you are going to be allowing into your photos. Now, cameras have what's called an expanded ISO. For example, the XTI only goes to 1600, non-expanded. There is no expanded option in the XTI. However, there is a hack to expand it to 3200 ISO. Expanded is basically, it's almost like, how can I explain this in DJ terms? It's almost like a gain. Don't screw with it, really. The expanded is if you were to go into Lightroom, okay, your exposure, that's your stop. Your expanded ISO is almost like if you're doing this. Get the hell out of it, you are going to be introducing a lot of grain. Now, with some of the better cameras, I know that the 7D